It is that time again. It is 3 p.m. local time here in Atlanta, Georgia, and minus this whole pandemic thing, it's a really lovely day outside. Blue skies and sunshine. So we're here in the studio today for episode 5 of our Facebook Live Maker Sessions. And from a request from last week, we will talk about bales today. Some housekeeping things before we get started. We are excited to announce that we have reopened the Sprummer, which is now a combo of spring and summer. So Sprummer dates are posted, and we anticipate, if all things continue going well, that our Sprummer series should start with our Tuesday night series July the 7th, our Thursday day series July the 9th, and our Sunday series to start July the 12th. Those are all posted as events on our Facebook page. They are on the jewelry making classes page on the website. They are under group classes, and on the front page of the website, there's a really big oval that says Sprummer 2020 jewelry making classes. And if you click on that, you will go to our landing page where you could see at a glance the sections that you can choose from and the dates that those sessions will be held. So we really look forward to getting back to works and seeing all your smiling faces around our brand new awesome workbenches that I'm really excited about. So there's been some changes here at the shop, so pretty excited to welcome you all back in the studio and share and create and connect together. So stay tuned for July. Registration is open, so come on. All right, all of these videos, if you catch us live, that's great. If you don't catch us live, we always post them to our Facebook page. They are shareable. We love your comments. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Our hearts are full. And I also post them to our Dana Ruth Designs YouTube channel, which has been pretty sparse, but now we have a steady stream of content that we are working really hard to create and maintain. So that page is fleshing out as we create content. We post it, so you could go ahead and check it all out there too. And again, we really appreciate you tuning in. Hi, I'm not sure where everybody is. Love if you'd comment where you're tuning in from. I always think the internets are such a wonderful, wild marvel that that we could reach people near and far all over the world. So thank you all for tuning in. Old friends and new friends, glad to have you here. All right, so bales. Bales are your connection mechanism that connects your chain to your pendant. And we have some really basic bales. And what I will talk to you about today is the tip of the iceberg. There are so many connection mechanisms for you to utilize for your bales. And we can get fancy, we can get schmancy, we can be very utilitarian, depending on what you have at hand, depending on, sometimes you might have to tackle a repair, sometimes you get to build a piece from the ground up, and your bale becomes a really artful part of your design. So we're just gonna touch on some basics today, and then I will have a more in-depth, hands-on creation video when we have some of our paid content that we will be producing to share with you. So I also will be creating these templates that I will post as a Word document or a Google Doc, and also am looking for a way to create them in a rather thin lucite or acrylic, or maybe I don't know if a Cricut cutter could cut these shapes, and have some templates for you to have behind your bench. So, all right, let's get started. So your basic bale. Here is a basic bale. It is, I carved this high, and I drilled a hole in the top. Hi, oh hi Marilyn, Cincinnati, hello Marilyn, hi Robin, how are you? Here is my high. That's backwards. Everything's backwards. It's backwards, but I went ahead and incorporated where I would put the bail in the piece, which you can see right here, my little hump, and then I went and put just a basic jump ring through here. So it's not a very fancy bail, but it's definitely enough to run a chain through, and I might revisit this, but just for now to show you, there's your basic jump ring through your hole that's been incorporated into your piece. And what that means is I didn't have to drill my hole further down, which we talk about in class when you talk about where to put your bail. I've incorporated that spot where I could put my bail already in the wax carving before I cast this. And that means I don't have to then drill into the face and front of the piece. So that's another consideration for you too. And any style of bail that we'll be covering later on in the session can be applied to this, and I actually might go back and do that and spiff it up a little bit. All right, so there's your really basic bail, a jump ring through a hole. This hole, as we talked about in cold connections, also to snazz this up a little bit and kind of up your finishing, you could put a tube rivet through this hole, which would make the hole finished more with an eyelet look. And I think that would be really nice. So I might come back and revisit this, I'm not certain, but there we go. There's a really basic bail connection mechanism for you. Okay. Here, so there's your jump ring. So with the jump ring style, and this is something that I am into lately, and I will show you this version, which is a challenging solder job, because solder goes where the heat is. And if you're not careful here with this style, use the same style that I'm wearing, where I have a U shape that connects onto my piece. If you're not careful, number one, you will melt this part. And if you're not careful where you're heating, your solder goes where it's hot. And if this part is hotter, your solder will run to the curved part of the bail, where instead I need the solder to run down and join the legs of this bail to my piece. And you need to make certain that you see that solder seam all around the round part of your wire, or whatever wire you're using, to make sure that we have a good solid join, so that you or your client or whoever you have the privilege of this exchange of energy for commerce doesn't look down and they have a jump ring on a chain and the beautiful pendant is somewhere where it fell off. So, but this is one style of bail with a simple jump ring on it. Now, I like to do multiple. I love to do this style of bail. No, we're not in focus. Hello. And then I love to do multiple rings through this style. So here's this style with my famous multiple rings. I don't know, focus. Multiple rings through my little U-shaped bail. So I find the bail is another point of interest and another design element for you to make pieces that are uniquely yours. So I'm notorious for the multiple rings through the bail. Now in this same style, you can, now this is just, I just threw some copper together for you, so this really isn't anything. I mean, he's lovely, but he's not a thing. So what I suggest to the students when they come through Metals 1, Beginning Metals, they get an introduction to the foundation skills that I call daily drivers behind the bench. And in that 8 weeks or 4-week series, whichever section you choose, you get an introduction to all of the skills that you'll use behind the bench to make everything from earrings to engagement rings. Well, once you come through once, you're not done. You come through again and we build on those same foundation skills that you've learned, and then we add to it. So Robin, I remember when you came through time 1 and then you came through the second time, and we pimped your skills with adding a post to make a stud earring to up your soldering skills and give you another version of an earring to make. So when the students come back through and we turn one of our projects, maybe our stone set ring, turn it into a pendant, they want to make a bail and we want to do something beyond the hole with a jump ring through it, and they want to get more practice with some in-depth soldering and flame management, we do something like this. So here we have a piece of, so here, this can ride, by the way, either to the front where you don't see the bail, or it could ride this way where you do see the artful swirls of the bail. Now this can be made in tens of ways. You could just do a simple U shape and have the legs come down. I chose to do some little swirlies here to give a little bit of more, there we go. No, yes, no, a little more visual interest. This could also show on the front and could be part of your design elements if you'd like. Another version of this, so here the same thing. You have the challenge, if this part is hotter, the solder will flow up on your wire when I don't want that. What I want is the solder to flow down and join this to this in a sturdy, enduring way. So there's another option for your bail. And again, it can either ride this way, or it could ride this way. So if you're not keen on this, another very simple style is to take your very basic, just a round wire. This also looks great if you do it to the front. If you can see that when my finger's in the way. So you could do that. Just make sure that you leave enough room here for whatever will be going through, whether it's one ring, multiple rings. You could put a ring off of this side and this side and have your chain come off like so. Who's to say that this beautiful element can't have a toggle coming through it? Yes, you can. So there's so many possibilities here. I hope your creative wheels are turning with all of the things you can do with these phenomenal mechanisms. So just taking a round wire also. And this is what it would look like from the, gosh darn it. This is what it would look like from the front or the back. And then if you wanted to show, if you have some decorative wire, you did some forging or for whatever, you could also have it go this way. You could do some ball detail here. You could put a stone on here. So many options. And then all the jump rings and ways a chain could go through this or come off of this. All right, but these all require heat. Although the same mechanism can be accomplished cold. You would just forge out your ends a little bit wider, like we did with our cold connection earring. If you remember, we had our little V-notch guy, which could be any shape, by the way. And what we did is we forged it all to work hard on it and give it some visual interest. And then we made the little legs, we forged them out a little bit wider so that it could accommodate that number 55 hole for my 16 gauge wire for my rivet. So these mechanisms could also be joined and overlapped with one another, and that can be your connection mechanism too. So let's talk about that as we start to talk about more and more bails. We're going to talk about some cold connection versions of this and also some heated connection versions of this. So this is a pendant that we used to do in the studio for cold connections and piercing. And you could see it's bail. So it's bail, I'm going to get to in a moment, but what's happened with this piece of material is it's been folded over. We've drilled through this side and this side, and we've set it with a rivet, which is in style with the rest of the technique that's used in this piece. So you could make your bails cold also and connect them, and you'll see it's set with my 16 gauge rivet. So there's a way for you to do a cold bail. All right, let's talk about the same bail cold, and then we'll talk about it hot. So, well, first let's talk about it. You may be wondering, how do we get this shape? Well, it's the same concept when we made our cuff bracelets. And I showed you the different styles that you could make, the templates that we had, and the different styles you could make and what that looked like flat out, and then what that would look like when you brought it around to its cuff form. Well, so these are, can you see? These are some styles of bails. They're pretty basic shapes. And then you could imagine when they fold over, well, that's when you get your bail shape. So the one that I just showed you was more of a marquee shape, which would be this guy here. So here you could have a longer bail. Here you could make it a little bit shorter. Here it could be a shorter, stubbier bail, which gives you a wider part where the chain goes through. That's kind of cool. This makes a great template for a ring also, which gives you a taper in the back and a wider in the front. So what you may not realize yet is all of these things that you're learning transfer so far beyond the thing we're making at this point. they transfer onto really everything you can make down the line, all these basic shapes and forms. So here's some samples for you. Now what I've done is I have made this one here that I'll show you. I pierced it out. And then I'm going to show you a sample of this one here that we're going to look at hot and cold. And then I also have this little stubby one here that I will show you what it looks like folded over. And then I have some other ones to show you. Now, these bales, here's what one looks like when the bale terminates on the front. Please forgive my drawing. Here's what it looks like when the bale terminates on the front. All right, so it's an artful part of the design. This one is another piece where the bale is on the back. And you could do some really artful things with this structural bale. But from the front, it looks like the chain is, it looks like the pendant is floating on the chain. So there's so many options. That's really, there's so many different styles you could do. All right, so here's what I've done. Well, first, here's this guy. Here's the little heart. Here's this guy. All right, so here's my little heart bale that I've pierced out. And then you'll see what happens when we bend him over. Now I have metal dapping punches here. You could use your solder pick. You could really use any form that you have. But you'll see how it takes the form of a bale. And I just used the Pilot Uniball pen here. And you'll see that I have a beautiful bale. It looks fine as it is. I could put a little stone on it. I could embellish it. I could use my hammer hand piece and put a really sparkly design on it. I could scribe into it. I could etch into it. There's 100 things I could do to it. So there's my little bale. This is this guy. This was the shorty one. This is the shorty size. I don't think this is in focus. But there's the little shorty bale that I have. All right, so let's talk about, now these, so how would I join this? Well, this I could solder. I would sandwich it between and I would solder it on. Some of these, if you choose to, you could solder the front or you could solder the back on. And if I left this longer, I could do some artful work where I would have more of a tension fit. I hope that makes sense. You just want to make sure that this is tension fit against the base of your pendant so that there's a positive on and a positive off. So really, you could either solder just one side of it on, or you could, which what I'll show you next, you could put a post here and you could rivet one side on and keep the front side not joined, open, but with a tension fit so there's a positive on and off. All right, so let's talk about that rivet post. So here's a bale that I've cut in one of the diamond shapes. What you can't see is I've put a post on the back. Now this post, and I also have drilled a hole here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see. I've drilled a hole here. So I have two ways that I could set this bale. I could fold this over, have the pin go through my jump ring, my connector, match the peg through the hole, and I could snip that, rivet it down, or if I choose to, I could put the peg through the hole, drop some solder on there, and then I could file it down and it would be invisible. So there's some options for you there too. So that's that version of the bale. I like to use this one. And what else do I have here? There's so many different styles. Sometimes, now there's a labradorite that will go in here, a rose cut labradorite. And what you'll see is I have a ring that isn't completely closed. What has happened is the ring, the teardrop of my teardrop labradorite fits into where the opening of the ring is. I'm not going to use the half round wire that you see here, although that looks all right, actually. It looks kind of cool. I will more than likely put 2 rings off of this. I like to do multiple. This will probably look something like this when it's done. Not these because they're not to scale, they're too big. I could do a multi here, multi-ring bail here, but what this will more than likely live as, I'll have 2 rings coming off the center ring, and I might do a side toggle. I love me a side toggle. I love a side toggle. It gives such, the clasp mechanism gets to show, and it becomes part of your design, and I am notorious for doing toggles and multiple rings off those toggles, and that's just my jam. I just find it visually interesting, and it gets to show. So that's more than likely what's going to happen here if I ever revisit this. All right, truth be told, this was a match set, and I dropped one on the floor, and it cracked it. So now this is one, and I haven't quite gotten to the point where I can look at it and finish it. But it's on the bench, so we're getting close. I'm going to work on it. It shall be finished. I'm going to get to work on it again. Again, one of my lovely drawings. So this is currently at the Rayford Gallery. If it has not already found a home, it was a beautiful piece of, I want to say, Compass Mine turquoise. And I made my side toggle. It's one of my favorite mechanisms. I had multiple rings coming off the toggle closure, and then off of that toggle closure, these multiple rings held another ring that held my teardrop, just like this, held my teardrop Compass Mine turquoise piece. So go crazy. So here's something also, tubing. For those of you that don't use tubing, this could be a nice exercise in stretching your creative noodle to think about how you could incorporate tubing into your pieces. Tubing's wonderful for rivets. Tube setting is a really clean setting that I absolutely love for faceted stones and cabs. Tubing's wonderful. If you are going to be cutting seats for stones in tubing, please make sure you order thick wall tubing, because you will be cutting into that to make a seat for that stone. So you do need thick wall tubing. So here I have some tubing, and here I have this, dendritic fossilized something I've had for a decade or more, and I finally have pulled it out of the stone bin, and I've made a setting for it, and how I will, my bail, it's going to be a little bit something new for me that's been floating around my noodle. First of all, tubing can be set on top of your piece. Now this tubing's not big enough for any chain to go through, but that's not how it will live. This was bought as thick wall tubing for some little tiny black diamonds. I like to set small diamonds. So this tubing though, for this application, I can set on top of my piece, and if this were a wider diameter piece of tubing, the chain could go right through. But I don't want to settle for that. I want to experiment. I've had one of these forms on my bench for over a year that I made the form, but I never did anything with it. So now is the time. So do you see what this is? I'll use this. What this is a U that I have forged out the top. Then I have put this, I did this backwards. I put this then on my anvil, and I forged on the horn. I forged the other side. Then I tipped them up with my flat pliers, and now I have this mechanism. So what I'm going to do with this, and there's holes in this side. So what I'm going to do with this is, my plan is to do this. I like when there's movement, which is, I think, why I like to have those rings off of, rings on rings on rings on bales, so that there can be a lot of movement in my pieces, so that metal, as I always say, is very cold and static on its own. So if you could give it life and give it movement, very, very much into that. So do you see what I've done here? I have the same mechanism I just showed you, and I have put some wire through, and I've put some tubing here, and then this will go on this. He's not ready yet. We have some work to do here. Now, how will I finish this? I could either solder some balls on the end. I could put multiple pieces of wire through. What I will more than likely do is ball up the end of the wire, which I like to do also. So I'll ball up the end of the wire. It'll keep with a very rustic look for this piece, this fossilized thing that was dug up from the earth. So here, we'll go ahead and we'll get some movement on that. So I hope this sparks some inspiration for you to incorporate some movement and some different forms into your connection mechanisms. So we've covered just some really basic, bales here. I think I just wanted to show you this also off the spine of my feather. I have my open ring, and where there's two solder joints here, and the ring joins to the feather where the spine comes up. And this, I just put one little ring on here for a bale. This would make a great pendant, and I'm not quite certain it might be a pendant. I've curved it with my bracelet bending pliers because I think it will live as a bracelet, but I'm not quite sure yet. I've carved the feathers and cast them, but I'm not quite sure what they'll be. But I just wanted to show you, if this were a necklace, I would put my famous multiple rings through. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on bales. No, I have some more tricks to show you. So this here, I had some patterned wire that I picked up, and here I have put, this is some half round. No, oh darn it. No. All right, well, anyway, it's textured and it's pretty cool. I have soldered two pieces together. Boy, I didn't realize I have crooked fingers. I have soldered these together, joined them down the middle, and I have filed them into a taper. And what I will do now is I will bend them. And I have created, out of some scrap wire, I have created, focus is nil, but I have created what looks, from my eye here, a pretty cool bale because it's two pieces of half round wire that are soldered together. So that's interesting. What I could do also, I could also do the reverse. I could connect them at the bottom and the top and splay this open and have more of an open bale. Maybe folks like a daintier looking, it depends on the work that you do. You can have a daintier looking bale if you open this up a little bit, and it would have an airier look to it. But experiment with putting multiple wires together side by side and making a format of that. Another option in this same, I'll use this one, in this same example here, is I could frame this with some wire. Solder some wire down on the perimeter, and that would look really cool also. It's going to be very difficult with this, more difficult with this, these corners, so I might save something like that for a more basic shape, like maybe one of these ovals or maybe one of my marquees. But that would look really amazing if I had my flat sheet and then I had my wire framing it, and I would trim that where it's flat and flush on the sides where it looks like it's one piece, and I could form that over. In that same form, I could come back to my dapping block, unless you have some pitch, unless you like chasing and repoussé and you have pitch, which, unless you're into chasing and repoussé, you don't have pitch. But if you do, you could put that same bale form in your pitch and bow it out. If you don't have pitch, or if you have no idea what I'm talking about, or if you're not into chasing and repoussé, you can kind of do the poor man's raised moving metal that we talked about last week with your piece of wood. And you could bow that material out and give it some dimension. So that's another option for your bale. I wanted to show you just a quick and dirty bale, and when we're in the studio and we are doing our sawing and piercing lesson, and I pull up the Metalsmith jeweler saw piercing search results, there's always an artisan that comes up, and their work is very recognizable. It's a marquee shape, tritone with trees in fall and winter. And what I point out is the use of multiple metals for just beautiful use of color with copper brass and silver. We talk about how that artisan has used the saw to draw, but what I also point out to you is a very easy, quick and dirty bail. And it's this. Looks like little ears. I don't know, can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. So it's a really easy bail. And what I have here, so that's the one I've made. What I have here is just a basic ring. It's a jump ring that I've soldered closed that I will now make into an oval. How can you do that? You can take your round nose pliers and I can gently, now if your solder joint is not good, this will pop open. So you'll see that I have stretched it and now my circle is an oval. You can either bend this in like a little bow tie, if you like. And then what I've done is I've taken this. Now keep in mind my round nose pliers are conical. So you can either, I don't really have a dapping punch here or something with the same diameter. So keep in mind I'm going to form a little bit this way and then I'm going to flip the stock a little bit this way because the jaws are conical and it won't move my metal evenly. But just for demo's sake, just to show you to get the juices flowing for you of what I'll be doing. I'm going to just bend them around to join. Now I've pinched mine together. You can either solder this closed at the bottom here, if you like, but there's your point where you connect. And you'll look and see on the sides now, like magic, a chain can go through. This is an absolutely fine bail. It's a simple bail, it's a rustic bail, but it's a bail, and it will connect to your piece and you run a chain through it. So I'm glad you got to see that. Well, all right, this is just a quick and dirty on bails, just to show you some options and show you some basic shapes and forms, talk to you about how you could incorporate them as a major design element in your pieces, and you could mount them to the front, you could mount them to the back, you could mount them on the back in more of an invisible format, and how they could really be part of your style and a very recognizable part of your style. When someone looks at your work, they know that it's yours. All right, so I think I'm going to open the rest of the time up for any questions. I'd love to hear about what you've been working on, what you've been making, and any questions that you might have. Maybe we can kind of turn it into a technical Q&A. If I could answer anything for you, I'd love to do that. Yay, nay, no? All right, so I'm thinking maybe for next week, for session 6, what if we talk about patinas? Yeah? What do you think? So I'm gonna work on some patinas this week. We'll talk about good old liver of sulfur because that's a pretty amazing patina. And you can also mimic that with some eggs that have gone a little funky. I will also work on some patinas using heat from your toaster oven. So that'll be kind of cool. I will touch on gilder's paste, which is a nice way to add color to your metal. If you like, we'll talk about good old silver black. And what else? You have no questions? Nothing? You guys doing all right out there? I'm about ready for things to get back to normal. You can see your smiling faces here in the studio. This is surely strange to be sitting here talking to a phone. So, all right, well listen, if you tune in on YouTube, you will see tools and supplies are, hi Larry, well thank you for tuning in. We are open for business. Tools and supply sales are still happening here at the studio. Please support your local business, your local small business. Navigating all of these SBA loan and paycheck protection loan has been such a sad, disheartening experience, but we are still positive that we may get some assistance to keep our doors open. Even though we're small, we have business insurance and we got to keep the lights on and we got a landlord looking for rent and we've got a mortgage to pay and all that good stuff, just like every other hardworking American. So we are open for business for tools and supplies. And in our YouTube description box, you will see links to all of the tools and supplies that we use for those projects. I've tried to categorize them in a really easy to navigate format on the website, so it will direct you to our tool and supply page on the website. Please let me know if you encounter any issues with a shipping calculator, any issues with local pickup as a choice, any issues with sales tax. I have to don my web developer hat and look after those things. Sometimes I'm not certain when there's an error that you are receiving. So please let me know if you encounter any issues there. And we have some flex shafts arriving from Fordham, some jeweler's kits. We have some flex shafts arriving from Arbe for our flex shaft kits. We have dapping blocks arriving. We have texture hammers arriving. We have all sorts of tools and supplies to help you make the wonderful shiny things you love to make. So please give us a holler, and we can't wait to provide you professional personal service for tools and supplies. And all right, well, nothing? No questions? No? Oh, hi, yay! Hey, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I really hope you're finding value in our content. I hope that that it's good to connect, and it's good to create, and it's good to share. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Again, I think we're going to do patinas. I might do some texture hammer demos. I'm not quite certain yet. I'll see how the week goes and how the demos go. But patinas are very cool, a nice way for you to add color to metal and alter the look of your brass and copper and silver. And oh, you're so sweet, Robin. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're well. And all right, everyone, stay safe out there, please. And that's it. All right.